that I've spoken to you on multiple occasions, being on the International Relations Commission, but this is actually our first conversation that we have that has nothing to do with the International Relations Commission. It's all about you. So I'm excited. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited too, and thank you so much for inviting me to this platform.
Oh, no problem, no problem. But before I begin, I just wanted to say that the purpose of the Expanding Our Roots interview series is to simply showcase the culture and consciousness of Louisiana. You know, just to get people to understand that Louisiana isn't just a place that is known for what it's usually known for. It's a place that's globally connected. Louisiana is a place that is socially conscious. There are people in this community that are trying to get Louisiana to the top of every good list and at the bottom of every bad list, and
Mhm.
reshape the narratives that often exist of our community by showing people real Louisianians and people who live here. And I ask a lot of complicated questions, but I never start with a complicated question. And the first question I want to
Okay.
start off with is, where are you from? Where are you coming from?
I am from India. I'm from the northern part of India, which is Punjab. I basically grew up in Uttar Pradesh, which is also a northern part of India. But then eventually, my family had to move to Punjab because of business purposes. So I did my high schooling in Punjab, but I did my earlier schooling in Uttar Pradesh. So that's where I'm from. And it's very close to Delhi, which is the capital of India. So if people don't know the reference, Delhi is the reference.
So tell me what it was like growing up in India and your upbringing there in the country.
Growing up, I basically come from a nuclear family in India. I know initially there weren't many nuclear families in India, but there was always this concept of joint families, where grandparents live together, where parents live together, and everybody is just living together, having fun and enjoying life. But of course, as things change and we move forward, everybody kind of moves on in life. So I had a very nuclear family kind of upbringing, and it honestly, I would say that it was kind of similar to American upbringing, because both my parents, they were working, and my dad, he had his company, he has an automobile company, and my mom, she is a fashion designer. So growing up, it was like both parents were of course pretty busy, but of course they made sure that they give time to their kids too. But of course, since India has so many amazing festivals, my house was always full of people whenever we had a festival. I mean, although it was a nuclear family, but still we have a huge extended family where, and it was a house where everybody was welcomed, and we used to of course have so many celebrations and parties and stuff like that. So I'd say that it wasn't very different from what it is like growing up here, but of course the culture is very different. That's something which makes United States and India different. It's the culture of the place. So yeah.
And I also know that India is a very big country and it's a subcontinent, which means that within, like America, there's different parts of America that are different. New England is different from the South is different from the West Coast and the Northwest. So I would assume that the same would be true of India. Like, what are some differences between maybe Northern India and then maybe Southern India or Central India, if these different parts of India exist?
Yes, well, yes, there is a lot of difference in the northern India and the southern India. And even when you meet people, you would realize that okay, this person can, because when here when I meet some Indians, they can literally look at me and they can tell that, oh, you're from the north part of India. You're not from the south part of India. It a lot is basically it has to do with the lifestyle of people. So in northern part of India, if I'm being completely honest, of course education is very important, but people are more into, I would say, being a little more carefree when it's about getting your education and being super focused about studies and things like that. Not that they don't do it, of course they do it, but it's more like relaxed, and it's not like, oh my god, I have to get a PhD, oh my god, that is so important, like, and the southern part of India, it's more like education is the most important thing. You have to have a PhD if you want to have a good social standing and things like that. In the northern part of India, it's more about having a luxurious lifestyle. Well, in the southern part of India, it's more about, of course they, I mean, of course they do have a good lifestyle, but it's not that, oh my god, we want to have huge cars, oh my god, I want to have a huge house. So it's that's how it's pretty different.
And as someone who grew up there, how did you navigate those differences being in India as growing up there?
Basically, the university that I studied in, so many people, they did come from the southern part of India too. And then of course you talk to those people and you get to know more. And some of my friends, when I was in Uttar Pradesh, some of my friends, their parents were from the southern part of India. And when I used to go to their houses and I used to like understand and see everything and how they lived, and I mean, you realize that it's different from how things are like in my house, or it's different in how they have, they how they see everything around themselves. So I think eventually you kind of realize that things are pretty different. And also, like, I've been to the south for a tour, and you meet people and you see that, of course, it's India, but it's very different. So growing up there, like, I realized that okay, there are quite some stark differences in the southern and the northern part of India.
Yeah, I asked that question because growing up in the South, I always feel like when I go to other parts of the country or interact with people from other parts of the country, I can't say our values are different, but our approaches to those values are different. One of the
Mhm.
biggest stereotypes that people have of food up north is that, oh, people up north can't cook. But that's obviously false. But at the same time, though, Southern culture is very much a cuisine rooted culture. Everything is about the food, the barbecues, cookouts, the tailgates, everything is around food. And there are people in Louisiana who live and breathe food. Like there's a saying that in Louisiana, the men cook like their mothers and the women drink like their fathers. And I thought that was so funny. But
Yeah.
it's true. But it's true though. It's like the gender norms around food and things like that are not necessarily accurate in Louisiana because everybody knows how to cook, regardless of gender identity.
Well, that's amazing though. That's great about Louisiana, but I mean, about India, the entire country is about food. Everywhere you go, there will be some kind of amazing food, and every place, the North India has its own different cuisine. I mean, the South India has something totally different, and to be honest, everybody mostly knows how to cook, but it's the women in India who know how to cook more than the men in India.
As
We
we
still
say,
have
yeah, as
to
we
show
say
that.
yeah, I'm thinking as we say in America, like there's a difference between knowing how to cook and knowing how to throw down in the kitchen. It's
Yeah.
like, like throw down. And I hear that the women traditionally know how to throw down in the kitchen, I would assume. So I wanted to go back to you talking about your experiences with your mom being a fashion designer, which is really cool, and your
Yeah.
dad, selling, being a automobile dealer. And that honestly is a very American way of operating as a family. It's like because nowadays most American families, both parents work, but that's not something that a lot of people, because of misinformation, think about when they think about India. What are
Mhm.
because of what we understand of the culture here in the West. So what are some other misconceptions that people may have of India here in the West that aren't always true for your life?
For one, I would say people think that India is backward and India is still like a poor country. I mean, sometimes I guess people think that, but that's a big misconception. India has come really far from what it was decades ago, and from what picture has been actually portrayed of India. I know when people watch movies like Slumdog Millionaire. I'm not sure if you watched it, but it's basically a story of like a kid who lived in slums and how he kind of gets into this competition where he, gets $1 million. So he becomes a millionaire basically. So that's why it's Slumdog Millionaire. So when people watch these things, people feel like here in America or anywhere in the world that, oh, the entire India is like that. People live in slums, people don't have money, people, don't have much education, or they don't have class and things like that. But this is a huge, huge misconception. Unless and until you actually come to India, you wouldn't really know how the real India is. Or unless and until you talk to a person who is from India, you wouldn't really know. So I think that in so many ways we are similar to India is similar to United States, especially if I consider my case and my upbringing. It's very similar to what happens here. And I think that is something which people really don't know. People don't see that.
I can definitely imagine that because I think when we talk about communities, we often think about them in binaries. I often find that this is the case when people talk about America, that, oh, America's a rich country. Everybody has a nice car. When you go to America, there are places that may not be considered developing countries or the same quality of developing countries, but we have poor people here. And our
Hmm.
poverty may look different, but people are still poor. And wealth may look different in other countries, but wealth is still wealth. And what I often find is that, when we talk about communities in other parts of the world, especially in African and Asian countries, we often forget that their social class is still a part of people's lives. There's many countries have a upper class, middle class, working class, and a working poor group of people. And also that globalization is still a part of our world as well. So not everybody is as isolated as we used to be. So things aren't always black and white. So I wanted to also, since we're talking about America, you are now in America. You're in Louisiana now.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do is I wanted to get a sense of your journey from India to Louisiana.
That's very interesting. My journey from India to Louisiana. Okay.
Well,
I
first, let me maybe I can break that question down in little bits and pieces. Like, first, what made you tell me about your educational background after high school? Because I know that you're in a master's program now at LSU, but how
right.
did you get to LSU? Maybe tell me about that and maybe your experiences being in your undergraduate program.
Me coming to abroad to study was a childhood dream for me. So as I was growing up as a kid, I always felt that I want to go to United States for my higher education because how it is so important and it adds some value when you study from abroad and especially from United States. Of course, the American dream is a thing everywhere, right? So that's what as a kid I always wanted to do. And then what happened was, I mean, this dream was always there, and initially I wanted to come for my bachelor's, but my dad, being so protective, he was like, "Oh no, I mean, anyway." So in India, this is how it is. Like, of course, girls get married and they go to another household, and Indian parents are very protective and very emotional, especially when it's about their girls. So my father was like that, oh my God, you're gonna get married one day anyway, and you're gonna leave the house. So at least for your bachelor, stay with me. I was like, okay. And of course, I did not stay in any hostels or anything, but I stayed at home while I was doing my bachelor's because my parents were too protective to send me out. So for my bachelor's, I did my bachelor's in biotechnology honors, and I had some really great professors who kind of did recognize that I had potential and I could go abroad and study in a great university. While this dream of studying abroad was always in me, there was a kink in life where I lost my father when I was 21. And at that point, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. But I think I think sometimes you have to hold on to your dreams, and it's like no matter what life throws you, you have to do it because it was your dream. And I also felt like, wouldn't my dad be so happy if I was doing this, if he was here? And I think that is what kind of kept me going. And then I was like, no, I want to do this. I still want to go abroad and I still want to get my master's, and that's what I'm going to do. And then, interestingly enough, when I was applying for different universities, which was my last year in my bachelor's, because like that's how the application process has to work. Like in your last year of your bachelor's, you have to apply to different universities and see if you can get into one. So while I was doing that, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. So there was another kink. And that was the time when where like for some time at least I stopped applying to universities, because I was like, I don't know how am I really going to get through this. This is so hard. But I think it was my mom, who's such a strong person, that she was the one who pushed me, and she was like, things happen in life and it's okay. And I know you're stronger than that. And if you want to, if you want to still go abroad, and if you want to study, and if you want to get your master's, you should do it. And I think it was her push and her strength that gave me strength to achieve my dream. And finally, of course, it was the professor, some of the professors were like really great in my university, and they kind of spoke to me and they pushed me that, well, we know this professor in Louisiana State University, let me speak to him and let me see, if he has any assistantships. So he actually spoke to one of the professors here at LSU, and he did have an assistantship. And I was like, okay, this kind of feels that it's a little settled. And you will not imagine, this literally happened within 2 months of time. From talking to that professor and applying for my program, to getting my visa and getting here, this literally happened in 1 month and about 20 days. So this was such a quick
Wow.
process where, where you feel like if something has to happen, it happens for you. And I really kind of believe that if something's destined to be, it'll be. And of course, it's also a fact that despite anything and everything that is going on in your life, if you want to get something and you go for it, you'll get it. So I think it all kind of worked out eventually. And I came here at LSU.
When I hear your story, I'm just thinking about so many different bits and layers. I actually had an interview with Eric Dexter. And by the way, whoever's watching this interview or listening can go to his interview. And he also talked about dealing with loss at a very unexpected time, and how in many ways that loss kind of shaped his life and what he wanted for himself in life. And what I'm hearing you talk about your story, of losing one parent and having to deal with the illness of another, what I'm hearing is more so dealing with the loss and the transitions, but also having a village of people to support you in the midst of that was almost like integral for your success, both as a woman and also as a human being, and also academically. So I'm really happy that you were able to have that village and to have somebody to say, keep going. Yes, life is going crazy, but please keep going, keep going. I actually heard right before the pandemic started, and it was eerily timed advice. I had a coworker who I remember I was having a really, really bad day. And she would tell me, and I remember she told me that she learned that life happens for you, not to you. Sometimes things happen in life not because people are trying to bring you down intentionally, or life is just trying to make things bad for you. There's always an opportunity that lies in a setback, or it lies in adversity, or lies in loss. Maybe that opportunity isn't tangible, but it could be something that allows for you to see, a new beginning or an ending where you thought otherwise. So I'm hearing you almost talk about this idea of being supported and having wind beneath your wings at all times and having that encouragement. I think that's very important.
I mean, to what you said and what your coworker said, that life happens for you and not to you. And I also think that all these things that happen to us in life are basically preparing us for the future. I mean, sometimes future holds something so huge for us that we know that we'll have to endure a lot of things when we go on forward in life. So I think it's preparation. It makes you stronger. It actually makes you learn that you'll have to endure a lot of things and be ready, because life is big for you, and believe in that.
Right. Right. And sometimes, in many cases, you deal with adversity because it may teach you a skill that you may have lacked prior to that. Like during the pandemic, I can honestly say that I was not good at improvising and going with the flow before the pandemic. But
Hmm.
having to deal with the sudden disruption of my life made me find this skill where I was constantly improvising. Like, okay, my schedule didn't quite work out the way that I planned it today, so maybe I can make a new schedule.
Hmm.
Or this meeting got canceled, so maybe I'll use this opportunity to do this. Or,
Hmm.
this relationship I had didn't work out, just speaking in general. So maybe I need to spend some time by myself. Like not seeing everything as like, oh, crisis that I can't resolve, but more so, okay, this is happening in my life. How can I get to the other side of this? And how can I get the support I need to get to the other side of this? And that was a very helpful skill that I learned that I didn't have before the pandemic.
And I also feel that all the problems that are really small, which we used to think are so huge earlier, I mean, you kind of start looking at life in a very different way after you go through all of these, issues in life. And then you're like, well, this is such a small problem. I can handle it. That's not a big deal. After you've kind of gone through so much in life, it just gets, I think it's get so many things get easier.
I mean, let me tell you, there are some things that I was going through, and I'm talking about going through when I was in high school that I look at now, I'm like, man, it's like, why was that even an issue for me? But then that's because I grew and evolved and went through some more things in life. And certain challenges I had at 21, I no longer have. And if I do have them, I know how to deal with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just preparation, I guess.
Yeah, right. It is. Well, speaking of preparation, it's very obvious that you've had a very dynamic journey to America to study here at LSU. But I know personally that that you're not necessarily in STEM. You studied a STEM related subject in India, but you're studying something different, more in communications, the liberal arts and humanities here in at LSU. So what caused you to make that switch from the sciences to communication?
So, since I think I was in sixth grade or seventh grade, that one of my English teachers, she came and they were actually starting to prepare this debate team in my school. And they were basically asking students to audition for it, come and prepare like a 1 minute speech and come and speak. And, there'll be some rebuttal questions and things like that. And I of course auditioned for it because I always loved to be on stage. This was something, and I'm well, you don't know, but I have a diploma in a classical dance which is called Kathak, and I've learned that for 5 years. So I was this kid who always wanted to be on the stage doing I don't know what. It could be dance, it could be recitation, it could be anything. So me and the stage have a love relationship since I was a kid. So because of that, I did go for this auditioning, and my teacher was like, you have this great skill of speaking. You're a great orator, and if you do like sharpen this skill of yours, it'll be really great for you in the future. So since that time I got into debate teams, and then eventually in my school itself we used to have these national debate championships. And I'm not sure if they have it in United States, but we had British Council debating matters in India, and I went for one of those, and we became the runner ups. And I still remember one of the judges, he commented on me. She's like, "You can get into serious debating." I'm like, "Well, thank you so much." So I was like, I always like to, stand up and speak and debate and be in certain things like these. So that's where this whole communication thing kind of came from. And then when I went to college, which was my bachelor's, we also again had a debate team. And I was the best speaker for consecutively 4 years and the best debater for consecutively 4 years in my university. And then we also went for so many national championships. So I did win one of the gold medals in the national championship. So that was always a passion to, go forward and speak up, which I thought was just a hobby for me. Since sixth grade, I just felt it's a hobby. It's just something that I like to do. I don't, and okay, honestly, like Indian parents are pretty much like, the kids either should be engineers or they should be doctors. So they should be either studying non-medical, as they say in India, and medical for, if you want to become a doctor. So my parents, my mom always wanted me to be a doctor. So I mean, even I loved biology. I don't say I didn't, but I did not realize it all this while that I love communication more than I love biology. So I still kept on studying STEM. I still am. So that's why I'm getting a dual degree now. I'm getting a master's in neurosciences because that's what I started with. And I'm also getting a master's in mass communication and journalism because eventually I've come to a realization that that is what I love. What also kind of pushed me to get this degree was after I did my bachelor's back in India, I worked for this digital media company where I was an anchor person for them. So I worked for them for about 9 to 10 months. And after that, I got an offer to like come to LSU. And I think working there made me realize it even more that I love to do this. And if I have to really choose something as my career, that is what I would want to do because it really makes me happy and makes me so excited. Even doing this interview made me so excited. Okay, I've got to be on the camera and I've got to speak because that's what I love to do.
So you at one point were the best debater in India.
Yes, you can
Yes.
say that. You can say
I'm
that.
just saying, like you said, I mean, and that's impressive because I mean, India is a very big country. And if you're winning gold medals at national championships in the entire country of India, you are the best of the best. Like,
Yeah, I would say that. I want to be modest here, but well, yeah, that's what the
no,
situation.
own it, own it. Like, I mean, it takes a lot of work to debate. I mean, I don't like debating. I'm the type of person that, if I am right, I'm right. There is no debate. But the skill of debating that's a skill.
Yeah, I
That's a
think
skill.
honestly, I mean, that's what you need. You just have to own it with confidence. If I'm right, I'm right, and I'm going to say anything to prove that I'm right. That is
Right.
what debate
Yes.
is about.
Yeah. And yes, exactly. I think there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Because
Yes,
confidence is like that you are the best, but you also know you could be better.
yes.
And arrogance is you think that you are better than everybody else. There's a difference, you know.
That's so beautifully how you put it. I mean, I
Yeah,
always felt that there's a thin line between confidence and arrogance, but I think, yeah, it's very beautifully put that
yeah,
confidence that you know you're the best, but you can be better.
yeah.
Arrogance is that you're better than everybody else.
Right.
Confidence
Like,
is when you're not comparing yourself to anybody else, but you're just comparing yourself to your previous self.
right. Because oftentimes people who are confident will say, well, I could be better in this, but you also know you're not bad either. And you
Ye-
also know your power. But arrogance, oftentimes, in my personal opinion, people who are arrogant oftentimes could be profoundly mediocre and not realize that they're mediocre, or they actually are good, but they allow themselves to get stale and get into a
Mhm.
stagnate where it's like maybe, and or oftentimes they think that they are better than other people. Like no one can be better than them in any respect, and it reflects in how they treat people. Yeah,
True.
yeah. So you can be confident and also acknowledge that you're not the best, but you are pretty darn good.
I'm going to write that down.
Yes, please do. And also, if you forget to write it down, you can always go back to this interview when it uploads. And
Yes, definitely.
yeah, this is being wait, is this being recorded? Yeah, this is being recorded. Okay. Okay, but a serious question I also want to ask, because you studied in India and now you're in the United States. From your point of view, what are the differences between education systems in America and educational systems in India?
Okay, education systems in India and United States are very different because, okay, especially if you look at the bachelor's degrees here, I have seen, because, okay, I am a teaching assistant. I have to teach biology in the biological sciences department. And I see how hard these kids have to work to get a bachelor's degree. Whereas in India, for a bachelor's, it's very chill. It's like all you basically have to do is just take a few classes, complete your coursework, and that's it. But here, it's more like you have to be in so many extracurricular things too to stand out and, do something if you want to get admission for masters. And I literally see these kids are working two jobs to make ends meet, and then on top of that they have their coursework, they have extracurricular activities. I'm like, I don't get it, how these kids do that. And they are still kids, they're all like 18, 19-year old, you know teenagers. And it is so crazy to me. And it also like makes me feel how strong these kids actually become from a very young age, and they kind of know how to support themselves. But in India, I mean, it's a great thing to have. I do not deny it, that the Indian parents are very protective, and they will support you for as long as you start earning on yourself, on your own. And in India, we don't have this culture that when you're studying, when you're doing a bachelor's degree, you're working on the side too to make ends meet. It's the parents who are financing your education. It's the parents who are basically giving you a good luxurious life to live while you're doing your studies. So this idea of sustaining by yourself is something that the Indian kids do not learn until they're 25 years of age. Is after they've done their bachelor's, after they've almost done their master's, and after that they get a job and they, learn how to live by themselves. So I think this whole experience of and relying totally on yourself and not on anybody else, it makes these American kids way stronger and way smarter. So I sometimes feel I wish I had come here for bachelor's, so I would not have found it so difficult when I came here for my master's to live all by myself and to sustain by myself. And of course, it's a different country, different people, make new friends, and all the problems that come with it. So it becomes all the more difficult.
I think that it's interesting you even say that, because one of the things that, as an American growing up in America in this educational system, is that
Mm.
oftentimes we always are talking about education in a competitive sense. So like when you
Mhm.
mention about how American students are, I guess when you say it's a lot more resilient and smarter, then I also think about how I've heard the exact opposite, all my life. We're always hearing we have to be more smarter than India. We got to be smarter than China. These very competitive, nationalistic ways of speaking about education. And here you are saying that we are hustling.
Okay, one thing I would really say, maybe, okay, why the American kids sometimes would say, oh, we've got to be smarter than the Indian kids.
It's
The
a,
Indian kids,
it's the
all they're
administration.
doing is studying. They've been provided everything. All they are doing is studying their books, and that's that. But what you are doing is you're going in the real life scenario and you're making ends meet. You're not only studying, but you're also gaining all that real life experience that a person really needs to sustain in life, which the Indian kids definitely don't have until they're 25 years of age.
I wanted to also just quickly say that these are not students. I mean, students, of course, say that, but this is a narrative that's often pushed by administrators on a local and like state level, you know, especially in like the Department of Education when they talk about standardized testing and things like that. And also with the emphasis on STEM, this idea that we're competing against other countries. And I thoroughly detest that idea because education should be about enrichment and fulfillment, not about competition. And the only competition you should have is within yourself, not with other people. But I digress. But I do know that what you're saying, I deeply resonate with because a lot of times the narratives that we hear as Americans that, oh, we're lazy, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. When you know, there are people who've been working since high school. They were working at Raising Cane's or working at the Gap or working at Pier One or working at somebody's food restaurant as a waitress. When I was teaching at McKinley, I had students that literally would come to an after school program and then after the school program ended, go straight to work as a waitress or as a host at a restaurant. And they're like 17, 18 years old. And oftentimes when people from other countries come to America, I don't think they actually realize just how complex our culture and our society is. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that American students are smarter than Indian students, but our cultures and our societies are different because in America, we pay so much money for education that in other countries, what I've spoken to, education is not that expensive. And if you want,
Yes.
you can choose to pay more money, but to get a good education, you don't need to pay a lot of money. Whereas in America, there are literally people who are getting all this student loan debt and people that are paying literally the amount of money you pay for a house, just to get a 4-year degree.
Yep, that is so true. I mean, education in India, it's not as expensive as it is in United States. And I think that is also, of course, it's the way things have been built. It's the way the society is. It's the way the culture is. And that's what kind of makes two countries very, very different from each other. And I think also like the way the schooling system is in India and in United States, it's kind of very different. And I think why sometimes it's said that the Indian kids would be smarter is because there are so many things which are taught to the Indian kids at a very, very early age, which maybe the kids here learn at a later stage. So complex maths and complex language and things like that, they are taught to the Indian kids at a very, very early age. So your brain is kind of structured in a way to kind of understand complex things. And eventually it becomes very easy for you to understand those complex things.
Well, it's obvious that you've had a lot of time to kind of think about and compare, American society to Indian society. But I wanted to ask you, what were some things that you have learned about America that you did not know before coming to America?
Good or bad?
Both.
Okay. Let's just start with the good. The fact that the American people are so hardworking is something I did not know. The fact that the American people are also very competitive is something I did not know. The fact that people are open to not everybody, but there's so many people that I have met, and I've met some really amazing American people. They understand if you're going through some emotional stuff. Whereas like in India, if I think about professors, the relationship that students have here when it's about the professor student relationship, it's very different from what we've had in India. What I've had with my professors in India, they wouldn't really open up, they wouldn't share things, they wouldn't want to understand what is going on in a student's life. But here, professors, I mean, people want to understand and people want to support you if you're going through something. That is something which is so amazing um, about America and American people in a way. The bad things, I think, would say healthcare is such a huge problem here. It's a problem, it's a big, big problem. So I think this is, I mean, healthcare is one of the biggest issues that I realize. I mean, everything is so expensive. Medicine is so expensive. I don't know how how everybody's been living here and affording it.
Healthcare really is a big issue. Like I just paid my health insurance invoice for the month, and I'm like, why is this not free?
Health insurance and even vehicle insurances, insurance in general, this whole
It
market,
is so expensive.
it's very expensive. It's very, 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 very expensive.
And I think a lot of people don't realize in America just how the people who come to America, just how in one way we're very diverse, because I've heard a lot of people from other countries say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize you had so many people from all over the world." Like they thought this country was just all white people, and they see, African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, Indigenous people, Arab Americans, like people of all these different shades and colors here in America. But also that comes with a very dark history when it comes to race and ethnicity and other social injustices as well. And a lot of people who may not be as connected to what's happening in our communities understand that America, yes, we are a country that may have more freedoms and things that other countries do not have, but we also are a very imperfect country when it comes to our history and our society.
I mean, it's interesting how even, I mean, I can really speak about Louisiana and LSU in general, that when I came here, I did not know that there were so many international students and there was still so much diversity, and how in so many cases people are welcoming and people are accepting of other people coming in here.
Yeah, I will say that that's because of our diversity, because I can imagine in other parts of the world, of course, every country has division and every country has like disconnectedness within cultural groups. But in America, depending on where you're from, you could have neighbors who are come from a very different part of the world. I mean, even as a young person, I remember, the first person I met from India, like actually met, was my doctor. I had a doctor when I was little, and
Oh,
they
okay.
were from India, or it's like, the person that many of the students I worked with, when I was student teaching for a little bit, many young little kids, they were from Central America. So we're
Mhm.
always around people who are different from us, which creates conflict, but also creates more opportunities for us to be empathetic as well. And in other countries, they don't have those opportunities.
Yes, that is true. I mean, there isn't that kind of diversity if I look at my country. There is diversity in terms of religions. Of course, India has so many different religions, so many people speaking different languages, but when it's about people coming from other countries and residing in India and having that diversity, the global diversity, we don't see that. And that is something that I really appreciate about United States, the global diversity that it
And then
has.
also another thing is just the large presence of the Indian diaspora in the United States. There are a lot of Indian Americans who live in America, like a lot. Like it's one of the largest, immigrant groups historically. And India has been had Indian Americans have played an intrinsic role in American history for several centuries. Some of it has become more discussed as we talk about Asian Americans more often now than in the past. But Indian Americans have played a very big role, I mean, in our past and our present. But I also
Mhm.
know that there are some differences between being from India and your parents being from India and you grew up in America. So, what have been
Mhm.
your experiences with interacting with Indian Americans, like people that may have connections to India, but they grew up in America and they've had an American life?
I think it's a it's a part of where you grow, because I mean, the Indian Americans who've grown here, the culture of India and the culture of America, it's very, very different. How how even parents behave sometimes when you are in India and when you're in America, because I think when you see other people, when you see Americans, etc., the parents also have to kind of upgrade their thinking based on what is going on around them. And also, these kids who have grown here are very much more like Americans than they are like the Indian kids, because they are exposed to more opportunities. They are exposed to, I think, there are more liberties. And even the Indian parents, they have this thing of controlling their kids all the time. In India, that happens way more than it would happen here, because I think eventually that they understand, because there's always this conflict of like, okay, do we completely live by the Indian values, do we upgrade ourselves, like what do we do? And that's a problem for the parents who've come here from India, and now the kids also have to kind of go through that. There, I feel there is this confusion all the time, but I think eventually they're also getting there where they are blending in the American culture and American society, and because you have to kind of grow based on where you live. So it's just very different in the way we grow up.
Also, when you come to another country, you spend a lot of time trying to understand how you fit in, and
Right.
what parts of your host country you'll keep and what parts you'll say, nah, I'm good. And I know that for a lot of immigrant families, regardless of where they're from, there's always a delicate balance between keeping certain parts of where they come from and parts of the culture that they're here. And some people, in our nation's history, have done away with their entire culture of their homeland. They've decided they've become assimilated. But now, more recently, you're starting to see more immigrant families say, you know what? I like being in America. I'm proud to be an American, but I'm very proud to have come from where I come from. So I'm gonna take a little bit of this and take a little bit of that and make a life.
And blend it together. Yeah, exactly. It's
Yes,
just gets amalgamated, and you become this person like where you do have your roots, but you're also moving forward with the way the world is moving forward.
right, right,
So
exactly.
that's,
Yeah.
I
Well,
think that's been progressive, and that's kind of great.
yeah, and I think that that's probably the one of I am not like gonna do this like super nationalistic patriotic thing, but I think that that's probably one of the beautiful things about America, that we were able to have an opportunity to define who we want to be and where we want to go in so many
Yeah.
different ways, and
Yes.
find ways to be a part of something and some community in many ways. I have a couple of final wrap up questions to ask you, because I know we've been talking a lot about your educational background, your personal background, and things of that nature. But I also know that you're very involved in the university community as well as involved locally speaking. And it's very
Mhm.
obvious that you're very passionate about understanding, what's going on here in America and here in Louisiana. So I just wanted to pick your brain and get an idea from you, about what the things that you'd like to see happen to improve the quality of life for people here in Louisiana, or just in the United States. What would you like to see happen as someone who's coming from another part of the world and being a
Mhm.
part of the community here to make life better for this country and just the community you live in?
So I think me coming here as an international student, I always felt that we are so far away from home, and we basically would like this place to become our home, because some of us are going to be here working in different companies. I'm not sure for how long though, but still, for as long as you are here, this becomes a part of you. And I feel that what really needs to happen is this dialogue between the community and the international students, that and this sense of support, that you are here and everybody is there to support you, and this can become your home too. So I think eventually I really want people to have that feeling that we are not really outsiders, and we can also become a part of this society, and we are also completely welcomed here and we feel safe here. So I think these are a few things which I really want to see happen. I know like everything is in the process, but it'll be great where we can come together as a society and be like, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we should understand each other, and we should kind of embrace everything that comes with us being who we are.
I've never been an international student, but I can definitely resonate with everything that you're saying, because of the fact that, a lot of times people who come to America often come here as international students, or who came as international students. And I think about um, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. She represents Seattle, Washington, the
Mm.
area there. And she actually was born in India and she came to America as an international student. And she decided to make a life in America. And now she's a member of Congress, and how if we want to truly talk about the greatness of America, we have to create welcomeness for people who make this our home. Nobody wants to go to a place and not feel welcome. Everybody wants to feel welcomed. And people, if you want to have a city with a vibrant economy, you have to be willing to reach outside, and
Mhm.
make people feel welcome. Because if people don't feel like Baton Rouge is their home, they're probably not going to want to stay here to get a job. They're probably not going to want to raise a family here if they've been made to feel like an outsider the entire time that they've gotten a degree. And what I often see happening is, oftentimes international students are kind of treated as like, you know, yes, like they're just here. They're just here for a little bit. Oh, cool. It's cool that you're here. Okay, well, good luck
Yeah.
with your degree and everything. And then 4 years are up, and you're like, well, I mean, I can't get a job here. I mean, I don't know anybody here. You know, I'm feeling disconnected, so maybe I should go back home, or maybe I should move to a bigger city. There's a lot of work that we can do here locally to support international students,
Yes.
regardless of the country they come from.
There's so many new ventures and so many Louisiana-based companies, which can help with something like that, and we can come at a point where, I mean, it becomes global. I think pandemic basically taught us that everybody's connected and everybody was in the same kind of situation, and every country was supporting other countries, and it was such a great thing to see. So if I mean, a cause kind of brought us together. So I think eventually this can be a part of the society as well, that everybody's there to support each other, and let's rise up together no matter where we are in life.
Also, another thing is that I kind of felt, when you were talking about dialogue, is, another part of dialogue is also getting involved and being a part of action. Of course, there are different ways that people can practice, civic engagement and global citizenship. What I often find happens in our community is we oftentimes only reach out to people from other countries when it's time to have a fair or an organization, or a festival or something, to say, oh, get a poster and make some food, get a poster and dance for us. But we never reach out to the international community when it comes to being a part of conversations when it comes to social issues like our infrastructure, like transportation,
Right.
healthcare, education. And when I think about Baton Rouge and even New Orleans, because again, 821 is not just in Baton Rouge, we also, serve Louisiana as a whole. I think about, the fact that in many of our cities we have large immigrant communities who also have to take the bus, who also have to get to school, who also have to get to work,
Mhm.
who are in college, who are even teaching, who are running companies, running businesses. So they have a lot of opinions on how things should be, in this community, regardless of where they may lie in the political spectrum. So what work is being done to engage the international community, as a whole? I think we need to step it up.
Yes, I totally agree with you that there needs to be a dialogue where international students are also involved, because they are the ones who are really staying here, and also they are kind of contributing so much to the economy if you really see the bigger picture, because so many internationals come here to study, and that of course becomes a part of the American economy.
I mean, people do understand. I don't want to generalize, but I think that it's important to emphasize that people power the economy. And in a globalized world, it's important for us to not be insulated. When we think about the cities that we consider to be like cities with lots of opportunities, Houston, Atlanta, LA, Chicago, New York, one thing that these cities have in common is that they're very international global places. They want to be a part of the world. They reach out to the world. And I think Baton Rouge, New Orleans, because of its tourist economy, does a pretty decent job of it. But I think Baton Rouge can also step its game up as well.
Yes,
Definitely.
I totally agree with you. Baton Rouge really needs to step its game up in so many things. So
Trust me, I done lived here about
that's
90% of my life. So you're preacher, me choir. You talked a lot about, being resilient, about resilience in this interview. You also touched a little bit about this idea of staying hopeful and staying, optimistic and pushing through if you have dreams. And I think that for a lot of people, you know, there are times when, I'm just going to speak for myself. There have been times where I have had a vision for myself that I've abandoned, or I've, kind of let go, or I've not always felt confident about certain things that I wanted to do. And I felt like, okay, I wish I had somebody to encourage me. I wish I had somebody to help me feel like I can do this, or, help me to feel like what I am, like I matter and that I am enough. So what is some advice that you would give to people on how to stay encouraged and how to stay optimistic when they're dealing with adversities? Because you've dealt with a lot successfully.
I really feel, of course, as much as you want other people around you who support you and push you, everything in life starts with you and ends with you. So you have to be your biggest motivator, come what may, and tell yourself every day that you can do it and you are stronger than anything that comes your way, any adversity that comes your way. And I think, okay, honestly, there are so many times when you or I would feel like giving up on so many things, right? But then I think every day reminding ourselves that our dreams are bigger than all the problems that we face is something that gives me hope. And also, I mean, there are so many things that you face when you come here. You have to stay alone, and it is just hard. Life in general is hard. But I think what has helped me is positive affirmations, telling myself that I am enough. I am I am worthy of love. I am worthy of success. And I can achieve whatever I want in life if I go for it. So I think everybody needs to tell themselves this, because there's so much power in your thought. There's so much power in what you tell yourself, so much power in how you see yourself. And it all starts with you and it all ends with you. So have the confidence to be who you are.
If I don't leave with anything else from this interview, it will be that our dreams are bigger than the problems that we face. Like that's so beautiful. I literally wrote it down. You can not
Oh,
see my notes, but I wrote it down. Like, because that's so powerful. That's like the best thing I've heard all week. Our dreams are bigger than the problems that we face. And I know it's only Wednesday, but it is the best thing that I've heard all week. I don't think
well,
anything else
I'm
can top
glad.
that. Well, to end this interview, I want to ask, you've done everything. You've had a lot of jobs, and you've also been you're a grad student, and you also do communication. So I'm sure you've had this issue where when you've been interviewed or done an interview, you're like, I wish I asked this question. I wish I had a chance to answer this question. I wish I
Mhm.
answered the question this way. And I don't want you
Mhm.
to leave that way in this interview. So what are some final things that you want to share before we end the interview? Or what are some things that you want to kind of clarify or add on to, as we get ready to wrap up?
I just wish we can have more dialogue and we can get to know more stories, because honestly I feel that every story deserves to be heard. Everybody goes through so much in life, and I think we don't realize that it's not just me who's going through stuff. There are so many people who are going through similar stuff that I am going through. So I think when everybody would be ready to talk about the things that they are facing in life, it will give each other a lot of strength to face it and feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this. If somebody else is also feeling the same way that I am and they can deal with it, I can deal with it too. So I think I just hope, like with this interview, I hope I tried to tell my story, and I hope that somebody who listens would kind of know that there are so many problems that we do face. And if you could go through it, if Jahi could go through it, if Sashi could go through it, I could go through it too. It's not that hard. So I think just being there and being inspired and inspiring others to just face life as it comes and be
Yeah.
strong.
I would like to say this. I've been seeing a lot of rainbows lately, like almost a rainbow a day. And you know, rainbows to me are like a sign of resilience because after the storm comes a rainbow. And the
Rainbow.
fact that there's a rainbow every day is almost like a divine sign that
Mhm.
it does get better. Things do get better. And trouble don't last always. So just keep pushing, keep striving, and be optimistic.
Yep.
Like absolutely at all times. Sachi, thank you so much for making the time to be interviewed. I personally do think that your story got across well. I hope that you feel the same. And also, it is very exciting to add another country to my list of people I've interviewed. I think the number now is 9. We have now interviewed people from 9 countries, including the US.
That's great. That's really great.
Yes.
And I had a lovely time chatting with you, as I always do, be it
Yes.
whatever the
But this
topic.
time it's not with an agenda, with bullet
Yeah,
points. Yes.
that is so true. Otherwise, we always
Yes.
have it. So it was just a free flow conversation, and I just loved doing it. So
Yes.
thank you so much for having me.